was like 75. So
Really?
yeah.
My wife went to school over at Case Western there in Cleveland,
Oh
and
yeah.
then me just driving through. I've got friends from Ohio. It's Ohio's kind of on a travel list. We're trying to get some states checked off for our kids. So this summer we may we're looking at Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, kind of making
Okay.
that trek. We did a lot of the East Coast because it's East Coast. When you drive north, you can do 5 states in a day
Yeah,
because
you
it's so
can.
close
Yeah,
together, right?
totally.
And then when you get out west, you gotta plan months in advance to get maybe two if you're lucky, right? So,
Yep. Yeah, you hit
um,
the tri-state area, Ohio, Michigan, Indiana. You get some good. You get there's a few good things around here too, so it's definitely worth the visit.
yeah, no, I'll make sure that I tell all my guests that I'm like, listen, I'm gonna keep your contact information, and as I'm ironing out my trip here, if I can run across you and maybe pick up some of your favorite dives or something
Oh,
like that along the
absolutely. Yeah,
way.
I can tell you where to get some junk food. That's for sure.
I was folks, I wanted to tell you today's guest is Dr. Matt Kutz. Dr. Matt Kutz, an international leadership expert, award winning author, and a passionate advocate for building adaptive leaders who thrive in uncertain times. His work bridges academic insight with real world grit, and he joins the Jeff Robertson show to talk about leadership, identity, resilience, and navigating the unknown. For the folks that follow me, you understand right now how excited I am, and if you have um, if anybody that's followed along with the show know that these words, and this is what I wanted to point out to you, Dr. Matt, was I saw resilience and real world and grit and um, academic bridges
Right.
and there was some adaptive, right? Another word that I saw that was used, and then here was one that I saw that really captured me was new frontier. And man, let me tell you, I'm gonna tee you up here of I was just or on the phone with one of my close friends, and we're two of the same guys in a way of like we like learning from people. I would rather you have a kind of a storied background and let me learn from you than you have academia
Right.
and no nothing to back it up other than hey, I was a lifelong student and I got to be a professor. I'm just saying, folks. Some folks like
Those
that.
people drive me bats too. I get myself in trouble in my own in the academic community because I'm one of these faculty guys who have been like, don't you come to me and be one of those. I did my bachelor's, my master's, my
Yeah.
doctorate, back to back to back, and I want to be a faculty and researcher and bring no life to it. So I was one of those guys who I worked for a decade before I even thought about going to getting a PhD later on and came in later and yeah, the people you're talking about drive us crazy too.
Yeah. That's good because like it's Iris goes into I don't mind I tell a lot I'm transparent. That's why this is good therapy for me is I've had a lot of people tell me over time like earlier on when I was in some dark places was like, hey, maybe y'all think about talking to a counselor, and I'm like, find me someone who can relate. And they're like, oh, Andy, just get a counselor. I'm like, ah, you don't understand. I don't want a counselor who's had a perfect life and
Right.
who graduated from. I just want to be helpful. I just want to help people. And I had this perfect life, and I know that other people didn't have it. And I love those.
Right.
I'm glad you
More power
exist.
to them. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
just not for old Jeff, man. I need
Right.
someone. My counselor's got to have prison time under his belt, maybe. Um,
Someone who's been there and done that and bought the T-shirt, you know.
I've seen some changes with that, thanks to the military's involvement, and a lot of those folks that were inside the military circles are starting to find their way into private sectors, and then there's accessibility. So a lot of this stuff is changing, and that was all right. So I've rambled for longer than what I should have, folks, to tell you that that's why I'm excited. It's like we talk about leadership. There's always a guy in a suit and a tie and a briefcase, and that doesn't always transpire into our everyday lives, and
Right.
leadership is all sorts of different ways, and
Right.
relatability is a big deal, and how we approach things, and whatever that situation is and this is what I think is unique. So man, tell me like kindly, what's a day look like for you, Dr. Matt, when you're navigating?
Yeah. So life has been crazy for me these days. So like I mentioned, I'm one of these quote unquote academics who is totally an accidental academic. And I never intended to go to school, to go doctorate, graduate, none of that stuff. I was an athlete in high school. I wanted to be, and still am actually. My degree is in athletic training and sports medicine. So I still work with athletes and stuff like that. And just the way the path unwinds for you, it took me that way. But a day in the life for me is I get up early. I do this thing I call the 20-20-20. So I start my mornings off with 20 minutes of prayer and meditation, 20 minutes of reading, and 20 minutes of weightlifting, and just to get the blood pumping. So that's the first thing. The first hour of every day kind of consists of that. And then I get right to work. I write, I teach online. And I've been in it, which is strange for me to say because that's the other thing I was never going to do. And I'm a traditional faculty member. I teach in a doctoral program. I have graduate students, doctoral students doing research, and I teach in a, not an adjunct online person. I actually am in a remote doctoral program. And I work in Miami, Florida, is actually where the university is at, Florida International University. But I teach here in Ohio, and then I get to go to Florida for residencies. And but so most of my days are behind the computer and goofing around with my wife. We 32 years of marriage. Well, we're heading into 32 years of marriage. I got adult kids, grandkids, and of course they don't live near enough me for our preference, but we do what we can. And I do, like I said, I do a lot of writing, a lot of interacting, and meet with a lot of people. um, and developing curriculum and content is kind of my thing. But like we alluded to a little while ago, I have no interest. But let me back that up. Academic credibility is important as far as what the evidence says, what the research says. I'm a very evidence minded practitioner. Matter of fact, I call myself a pracademic instead of an academic.
I like
And
that.
and I get that from my colleagues in Australia. I have a faculty appointment in Australia, so I get to go over there a few times a year. And they call me a pracademic because you you can't do leadership justice if you're just like you said, the suit and tie. I'm wearing a hoodie and a t-shirt, and I felt bad. It's like, oh, thank God he's wearing a t-shirt. I got on the call with you here a little while
And
ago.
you're wearing black too, man. So it's like it's a great day.
You better
It's a
believe
black
it.
hoodie. That's
Yeah.
about, yeah.
But so it's important to know how to bring in the evidence and the research, and a lot of people don't. And I think that's a little unique thing that's fun for me is I've been real fortunate to be able to bridge that gap. You learn the stuff you learn in a PhD program, so I learn how to read the research and not just do it. And the big part is you got to be able to read it and then apply it and make it practical. Okay, so what does that mean? And in my life, I've had enough experience, moving, living abroad, things. I've been very blessed to be able to live in Africa, live in Australia, homeschooled my kids. I should say my wife did the lion's share of homeschooling the kids, but we collaborated on that and made sure they learned what we thought they needed to learn. And, and also just health things. And the day in the life right now is actually a year ago I was diagnosed with metastatic advanced metastatic prostate cancer. So that's been a real pain. But I'm doing well. But those are the things you're learning. You learn, and that's where leadership helps you out: the mindset, the resilience, the grit, the anti-fragility, and how important that stuff is. And it's not just a theoretical construct. And I'm so grateful and so glad that I learned the things that I did learn, because now I have to really apply them. And it's been great, because it's been a battle. I don't want to downplay the battle, but I'm also doing fantastic. Kicking butt, taking names, getting where I need to go. Getting in the right frame of mind, using those leadership um, ideals, the leadership ideas, the leadership research that's out there, and validating it in my own real life. So
That's a big deal, dude. Like I didn't, It's not in any of my notes, right, folks? For
I
the
know.
if you, let me remind everyone. This is I use this opportunity to make a new friend, and this is my opportunity to get to know Matt. Just like if we were just walking up and met each other, waiting for our table at the restaurant, and we're shooting a breeze. And this is
Right.
so man, I really appreciate you sharing. My neighbor, I've got a few friends that are where you are, and it's easy for me to convey that leadership message to them, like, hey man, focus on the right areas, and
Right.
do the right things, and keep your mind clear. What guard who you're letting giving you information. Make sure we're reading the right stuff. And some of the conversations have been about hope, and I got to suggest some Eckhart Tolle and some different Power of Now book and different books that have affected my life. But we're speaking. Um, the way you just framed that, man, is that's a big deal, because one neighbor, as he was coming out of it, he was he I don't know, survivor's guilt. I don't want to put that on
Yeah.
him. I don't think that was the case, but he was just struggling, right? And
Sure.
that messes with your hormones. They pull all the testosterone out of your body for the most part. So he's kind of. So I told him, I was like, man, go down and tell somebody they're going to be okay. Go into those appointments. You were there. Like, go to that first. Go stand in the room with somebody when they're having their first meeting with that doctor on that bad news, and just be like, hey, I've been where you're at. Let me walk with you. So that's what the folks. You definitely know someone that's going to be where Dr. Matt is right now. So make sure you share this with them, and the message that he's given them about how this is important. And it's I'm pulling for you, dude.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. And I've got friends everywhere, and all you can do is respond in the right direction. I don't know if this is the direction you wanted the conversation to go, because I certainly
No,
don't need to talk about my health issues, but it's a big part of who I've become. In fact, all you can do is the best that you can do. And when we were diagnosed, I include my wife in that, because these kinds of things certainly affect the people who love you as much as it does you. And to think otherwise is just silly. It really, really does. You mentioned testosterone. I'm a year, 13 months into my treatment now, and I've got another 11 months of androgen deprivation therapy, which is just sucks the testosterone out of my body. I'm on
yeah,
and that's a game changer. That's a legit game changer. And if you don't have something to lean into and something to know, I mean, it's one thing to think what that might mean, and 3, 4, 5 years ago, if I had thought about what it could mean, it'd be, oh yeah, man, that sucks. I would hate to not have testosterone, and what that means. Then you realize, it's not just a male sex hormone. It does so much more than that. It's a master chemical in your body, and it controls so much other things that men take for granted. And so, you're dealing with that stuff, and it's not just you, because it affects my wife, you know, dramatically.
yeah.
And we're actually both going through hot flashes together, kind of thing right now. All you can do, I mean, if all you can do is laugh about it. I mean, if you take yourself too seriously, it's only you end up in misery. So you have to laugh, you have to joke about it, you have to just goof around and be like, all right, well, I don't know what's going to work, but let's try this, and just different things. And so it's a mental battle. But fortunately, like I said, I've got a great support network, incredible friends, a great community around me. And so much so that even after we try to look for some support in our area and couldn't really find the support we needed. So we started a foundation, and the foundation is called Battle for the Bulge. And, it's kind of just, tongue in cheek, and, you get a
Yep.
little laugh because, men understand if you're in the middle of prostate cancer, and especially, what I had a Gleason 8, which is pretty bad, advanced. It metastasized my lymph nodes and my pelvis. So it's like I'm doing everything I can to save my bulge,
Yeah.
And so Battle for the Bulge actually being fun, kind of a fun little thing. So we created a foundation, Battle for the Bulge. Before I was diagnosed, I was real active triathlete, and 5K or 10K or half marathoner, always involved in sport. Like I mentioned before, real competitive in nature. And, testosterone wrecks that. I mean, not just the sexual stuff, but testosterone wrecks that. I mean, your aggressive edge, that thing that you believe, makes you masculine for a lot of people, not for everybody, but for a lot of people, all of a sudden I'm more apathetic than I was, you just I'm more mellow than I ever was. And it's not just because I'm sad. It's because my testosterone volume is essentially gone, and that affects you, way your brain thinks and how you approach problems and stuff like that. So it's a real battle. So we started the Battle for the Bulge, and it's a 5K race every year, 5 run walk family day kind of a thing, 5K. And we raise money for prostate cancer awareness and research and stuff like that. And it's this where our second annual one is coming up here in September. And I told that to my docs. I've got about 5 different physicians who are managing my care, all of them who are doing a fantastic job. It's they're like, man, I've never seen anybody respond like you respond to this news. You've got a great attitude, to the point where I'm not, you mentioned the counselor, earlier on. I have no professional qualifications to be a counselor at all. Yeah. And yet my doctors are, hey, do you mind if I have this patient give you a call? You mind if I give out your number, to my patients? And they're actually emailing me and calling me and saying, the doctor said that he hasn't seen anybody in his 30 years of practice who's handling this as well as you're handling it. What's the secret? So I've been able to do that, and just talk with guys and just, be heads. And I've had guys do that for me also. Some people, friends in my community, found out and whatever, and they reach out. And that's, to me, epic leadership. That's really where you stand in the gap for people, and you just tell them, listen, I don't know the answers. I don't know what you're feeling in your case, but this is what I experienced. This is how I dealt with it. Strong faith community, great family, and then also continue to do my work. I am not going to not, do my work. And the worst thing in my mind that anybody could do in a situation like that, and this goes for leadership across the board, when any kind of adversity comes up, is feel sorry for yourself.
Yeah.
You can't do that. And some people might say that. You mentioned, well, the academic in the suit who says that, who's never really done anything, means one thing, but when someone, who's been through the ringer says it, it means something different. And, had I said that 5 or 6 years ago, I don't know that it would mean what it means to me today to say, you can't go negative. You can't have bad thoughts. You got to continue to work. And it's not just cliche, it's life-giving. And, one of the things I had to do, just as an example of what I'm talking about, is, so obviously I have my day job and all that stuff. But I also have developed a little bit of a reputation as a leadership expert. Some people might say, some people wouldn't, but some people might. And so I have a decent little side hustle where I do keynote speeches, speak at events and corporate trainings, and I have some Fortune 500 companies, and I've written 8 books and things like that, and textbooks as well as popular books and stuff. And so I have had when radiation came up, it's 40 for me. It was 40 days every day. And so you can't travel because you've got to be here. And I had 3 gigs in particular that I was really looking forward to, like lifetime gigs. One of them was keynoting at the NFL's Health and Safety Summit, player Health and Safety Summit. It was going to be in March of 24 in Orlando. I was looking forward to this. I mean, I was going to actually, and then I was not only going to give the keynote, but then I was do a fireside chat with Tony Dungy. It was the plan. And so I had that all booked and scheduled, excited. And then this diagnosis happens. I tried to work around it. We managed as much as we could. And then the initial treatments didn't go as well as planned. So we had to do radiation also. So the radiation fell into that time zone, and I had to cancel that talk, and then I had 3 other talks, one including a travel trip to Australia that I had to adjust and change, and some big time stuff that's fun for me. So I found myself locked in the house for 40 days because I got to get up every morning, do the radiation, come back, and I can't go anywhere. So I could feel sorry for myself. And believe me, it's tempting to feel sorry for yourself because it's like, these ideas that you think are once in a lifetime opportunities, they're really not, because I just did that. They kept my spot, and I just got back from that NFL talk this year a few weeks
I
ago.
know.
So I was able to do it, but a year later, But I say all that to say this. It's like, what am I going to do for those 40 days when I felt like everything was over? I felt like the life that I had tried to build was falling apart. I worked so hard to get to the place to even be respectable enough to have an opportunity to speak at events like that, right? And then all of a sudden I can't now. It's like, man, you get angry. You get angry at God. You get angry at anybody, everything. And I wasn't going to do that because I knew better. And so what I decided to do was, you know what? I'm going to write 1,000 words every day for these 40 days. I'm not going to. I originally was just kind of a cathartic journal kind of a thing. Day 3 of my writing 1,000 words, I kind of fell into this idea of epic. I created a little acronym of epic and what it means to be epic. And I created it as a mnemonic device. So EPIC stands for be excellent, be perceptive, be inspired, and be compassionate, right? So I just kind of fell into that. And for the next 37 days, I wrote 1,000 words every day on one aspect of what it means to be or become epic, right? And it was just for me to not go crazy and keep time. Well, I just got these in the other day.
Nice.
I got a brand new book. It's coming out. This is a pre-release copy. Super excited about it. Becoming Epic: How Excellence, Perception, Inspiration, and Compassion Are a Remedy for Mediocrity. And so I'm so excited about it. On the back cover is as a picture, my picture there. I know you can't see it well on the thing, but it's me just finished a 5K road race. I was training for a triathlon, and that picture was taken just shortly before I was diagnosed. And I look at that picture and just finished this road race. I PR'd, I did great, I was feeling good. And picture with a thumbs up at the finish line kind of a thing. And then and then it was just not too long after that I found out I had cancer. And then I look at that picture and I realize, when I was running that race and training for that race, I had cancer in me and didn't even know it.
Didn't know it
And was doing well. So I kind of use that as inspiration for myself. And just, sometimes you have to inspire yourself, and depending on what you have inside of you is what's going to come out in situations like that. And I, again, was just very fortunate, very blessed to just be able to focus. Like I said, huge support system. But so I wrote a book out of that deal. And again, already people are asking me about keynoting for that talk and the epic talk and things like that. And so that book will be coming out, like I said, in summer of 25. So it's not released yet, but it will be July of 25. So really looking forward to that. But those are the kinds of things that can happen when we keep our wits about us.
Yeah.
Now, I want to be quick to say it's not easy. And I don't want anybody, please, don't feel condemnation or guilt or anything like that if you don't respond that way to a diagnosis like this. Everybody copes differently. And even I wrote in this book, there were days where a major win for me was just to keep my eyes open during the day, and not just give up. And I certainly don't want to sound like, oh, this is an easy thing. The big kick in the gut for my wife and I, when we were initially diagnosed, it was supposed to be, oh, this is the easy, good cancer,
Yeah.
And 99% cure rates, the whole deal, it's not going to be a problem. We're not going to have to disrupt your life. It's going to be a minimal thing. It doesn't look like it's so bad and all that. So I'm like, okay, great. The C word still is haunting, but it's like, all right, my doctors and my team are positive, right? So about 4 or 5 weeks later, when some of the biopsy results came back and they do a little bit more in-depth testing, some of the bone scans and all the things that they do just as precautionary things, they're like, oh, wait a second. It's actually metastasized already, so it's in your bloodstream. We found some spots in your lymph nodes. We found a spot on your pelvis. This is way worse than we thought. And now we're talking about survival rates. At the beginning, you get the data, and of course, here's the danger of being an academic minded person. The first thing that I did is, what's the research say, right? So yeah. I know how to find my own research, read my own research. I don't need somebody to tell me that. I'm like having conversations with the doctors, like, hey, have you read this and understand what about this and stuff like that? And they're like, oh yeah, I haven't read that yet. And so most patients don't interact with their doctors the way that I probably did. Any rate, I'm looking at stuff that we're talking 5-year survival rates. I'm 52. So I'm 52 years old, and I'm thinking, man, I got plans to live to my mid 80s, if everything goes the way I want it to. And now we're talking 57, maybe. It's like, yeah, no way, that's not working for me, So what do we got to do here? So we found out, of course, that research, was biased. Again, I don't want to scare anybody listening. If you have a similar diagnosis,
this is the equivalent of me Googling my symptoms, folks. So listen to what Dr. Matt's saying right here. Last thing I told my wife the other day, I'm like, don't stop Googling that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you find out that's just the initial reaction, but then you look at the data. Okay, these were the constructs, these were that. Come to find out, the survival rate is fantastic still. It's just a much longer, harder road than I would have wanted or had hoped for. And so at any rate, that's where we're at. But leadership, and that resilience, that anti-fragility, that growth mindset, all the things that, we read about that inspires us so much, absolutely 100% came to manifest itself in this situation. And I've been so grateful to have that mindset.
Like, you can hear it. And that's so you kind of you teed me up for a lot of questions. But I there's also this direction of, I have Matt, who is a beyond seasoned, has took care of himself. He's worked in leadership. He's probably developed programs that I am probably using, it's been just handed down or what have you, by some book you wrote or a paper you wrote, somebody picked it up. And anyway, I'm probably using a technique or tactic because you're that dialed in. But here's who I want to talk to. This is the guy right now that has maybe not worked in that leadership role and has not. Because here's why. You have this ability, and I see this as, whether it's in your situation, you're leading yourself through cancer. And a lot of folks don't understand what leading themselves look like with that positive mentality. Over on the other side, this could be a military operation that's gone busted. This could be a SWAT call where, we've ran the wrong door and shot the wrong person, right? Or this could be a law enforcement situation. This could be a fire scene. This could be a Fortune 500. Leadership wise, we could plug and play the scenario of when you have to lead yourself. And so right here's where it kind of tees me up there, is we're talking to that guy that is maybe not as seasoned as you are as a leadership in that segment, because he's over here going, all right, this is it. It's the end of me. I'm getting right with my life. And he spent the last 3 Sundays in church because he hasn't ever been in there, but he's like, I need to get right with everything. He's calling up all the people he's pissed off in the last 20 years, trying to make everything right. And really just struggling to get himself together. What are we going to tell that dude? Like, what's some steps that we can deploy pretty quick, Matt?
Well, I think one of the things we need to do is, you mentioned that person who's reacting now based on the news. I mean, obviously prevention, you've heard this, before, prevention is worth a pound of cure. And also prevention is worth a pound of cure. And, so one thing you want to do is you want to make sure all your T's are crossed and your I's are dotted before the bad news comes, So now, obviously, not everybody can do that. So if you're on the other side yet, and you're worrying about or thinking about it, do the hard work now. But for the person who is in that situation, listen, it's never too late. I mean, this is what the growth mindset is all about, right? This is what innovation is all about. It's never too late to reinvent yourself. One of the things that I train my kids and teach my kids is this idea of the sunk cost fallacy, right? So the sunk cost fallacy is the faulty belief that I'm too far gone to make a difference now. I've already done this. I've already invested that. So since I've already gone this way, I can't change. The classic example is someone who's watching a horrible movie or reading a horrible book. They're like 20, 30 minutes into the movie or whatever, and they're like, this movie stinks. And they're like, but I can't leave now because I've already spent 30 minutes. It's like, no, you still have got an hour and a half probably that you can redeem, and that's the sunk cost fallacy is we start down a certain road and we think because we've started down this road, I have to stay on this road. So the first thing I tell anybody who's feeling the way that you described is like, first of all, it's not too late to change. You have to, that's the hard decision. That's the leadership decision. Leaders, are leaders, generally speaking, because they're able to make a tough decision and a hard decision. And many times that hard or tough decision comes in the form of what am I gonna do in the situation I'm in. So you've got to make the hard decision to make the change that you need to make. We were joking earlier about food, for example. I mean, I'm a major foodie. I actually have an app on my phone and I keep a list. I'm a big Guy Fieri Diner, Drive-ins, and Dives fan. And I've been to, like, I actually travel around hitting those spots when he brings one up. So I've got like 30 or more under my belt. Well, those not traditionally the kind of food you're supposed to be eating. It's all right every once in a while. I was doing it more than every once in a while. And so things like that, you've got to change those things. And it's, easier said than done. Years ago, I read a book called Immunity to Change. And one of the things that the authors wrote, Keegan was the main author of that book, and a Harvard faculty, and a great book, Immunity to Change. And what they're kind of positing and proposing in that book is exactly this sunk cost fallacy. So many people, if given the choice of changing what they're currently doing now or dying, actually choose dying.
Yeah.
It's actually, so the whole point is dying is easier than changing. And some people just fall, and that's what we can't allow. That's why we need friends around us. So, going back to your question specifically, what I would tell that person is no matter where you have to go or what you have to do, find friends, find companions, find support, find somebody that's willing to help you, and then trust them, trust your team. I developed for myself, my wife and I developed an acronym called BATTLE. Matter of fact, I might even have the t-shirt on. I made a couple of t-shirts for that, Battle for the Bulge I was talking about. But BATTLE is an acronym that stands for, the B stands for be brave. You have to be brave. And that's that whole thing of just face your fear. And it's okay. It's okay. I promise you, it's okay to be terrified. Okay. It's okay to be scared and not know what you're going to do. But it doesn't mean it's okay to be paralyzed. You can't allow paralysis, but it's okay to say, I'm scared. I don't know. And bravery isn't the absence of fear. Bravery is admitting and confronting your fear and moving forward anyways. So you gotta be brave, and I don't want to necessarily go through, every single acronym. That's not my point here, but the first T, I'll just pick a couple of my favorites. First T is then trust your team. The other thing we really have to do is trust your team, and your team is more than just your doctors. Everybody automatically assumes when I tell them you got to trust your team that I mean trust your doctors, trust your healthcare providers. If you're going traditional medicine route or you're going alternative, I mean, there's so many things when it comes to cancer treatments that people get so confused because should I go traditional? Should I go natural? Should I go holistic? I mean, everybody's got an idea on how to cure cancer, but no one's done it yet. So they're all just theories. They're all just ideas. But regardless of how you decide to approach it, once you make that decision, trust your team. Your team is your healthcare providers, but it's also your spouse. You know, in prostate cancer's cases, it's, you know, usually your wife, your kids, your family. You've got to trust your team because they're the one that's going to get you through it, you know. And then of course, the E, my favorite one, the E is you've got to continue to experience life. You just can't not say it's done, you know, and still continue to plan like you're going to live 30 years because you probably are, you know, and to give that up is stealing something. I remember the first time my wife and I just sat together and we were sitting on the sofa and we just cried because I woke up in the morning. One morning we were eating breakfast and she asked how things were, and it was early on, right? So it's like scary. And for several weeks early on, I could not imagine beyond today.
Yeah.
You know, and all I could see in my future is what was going on today. And I was afraid, Jeff. I was afraid to think about 5 years down the road. You know, my wife and I have a new granddaughter. And, you know, it was just, you know, I didn't even want to put myself through the pain of thinking I might not be there for her high school graduation or something like that. So I just blocked out the future entirely. And I remember the day that I woke up and I said, you know, honey, I actually saw myself and I envisioned myself, you know, 20 years down the road at Evie, that's our granddaughter's name, at Evelyn's wedding, you know, and stuff like that. And then we just both cried because that was the first time in weeks. And I'm a guy, I mean, I wrote another book called Contextual Intelligence, and that's really been a ton of fun. That's usually what I do my keynotes and speakings on. And contextual intelligence requires the integration of what I call 3D thinking. 3D thinking is hindsight, insight, and foresight. And most people only use hindsight in most of their day-to-day decision making.
Yeah.
And so I really fight that. My big thing is hindsight is important. So don't not use it. You have to have hindsight, but hindsight apart from insight and foresight is very, very dangerous. And it only gives you a very small scope of reality. If you want to see more of reality, you have to integrate insight. That's what's going on right in front of you in real time. Most people don't pay attention to that. They're either thinking about the past or fantasizing about the future, and they're actually missing what's right in front of them right now. You have to have that. And then you also have to have foresight, and you can't confuse foresight with fantasy, which is what most people do. I spend a lot of time in my consulting and coaching practices just helping guys and people in general, leaders in general, understanding the difference between fantasy and foresight. Most of us default to fantasy. You know, wouldn't it be nice if, and our vision statements and our company mottos and our slogans are all based on fantasy and not foresight. So I knew that, you know, that's my thing. It's like, I knew that I had to get back to having foresight. I have to see a future that I like, that I'm in. And then the difference between fantasy and foresight comes down to the ability to articulate it. I teach people this: you're living in fantasy if you see a future, but can't describe how to get there. You know, I'd like to be out of debt, but I can't because. I would like to finish my book, but I can't because. I'd like to get a better education, but I can't because. I'd like to have a happy marriage, but I can't because. You know, they see a future, but they can't explain to you how to get there. That's fantasy. The person who operates in foresight says the same thing. I'd like to write a book. I'd like to have a happy marriage, whatever it is. And here's my plan to get there. And they can actually articulate it to you. When you can get to that phase of articulating it, you have done something in your mind, something in your brain has switched, and now it's become moved away from fantasy into foresight, which is actionable. You can't act on fantasy, but you can act on foresight. And so we have to have foresight. And again, foresight's not automatically common because our default is hindsight. We want to go back and remember how things used to be, how they were, what happened last time. And again, that's valuable. But if that's all you have, you're always looking at an incomplete picture. So when I had that, was able to actually see myself in the future that I preferred, of course, I talk about this stuff with my wife all the time. She thinks I'm crazy and I'm a total nerd about this stuff, but she knew the significance of meaning and meaning of that for me as well. And it was powerful. And it was then that I began to realize, okay, wait a second now. I still have to do the things that I need to do. I will obey the doctor's orders. I'm not in denial. Some people have accused me of being in denial. Listen, I'm not in denial. Trust me. I know this is bad, and I'm not in denial, and I'm not in this whatever pie in the sky. But I also know
it's
that
one thing to be in denial, not doing the work, right? I want to put that fire out for you. It's one thing to say you're in denial and you're just not doing the work or doing the appointments and doing the
right.
thing and all such stuff. It's another thing of being able to approach from a different mindset than most folks they're uncomfortable at the way you're approaching it because you're not, woe is me, it's all coming down.
Exactly.
Because we're trained to do that at an early age. We're trained to act out our emotions, and the ones like yourself to where you've reframed that it's different and it's making someone else uncomfortable because you're not following the norms, man.
Yeah.
That's you're kicking butt, dude.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. I have found out since then that exact thing is people are saying those things because they themselves are
Yeah.
put off by it. They're in a place where they have much lesser issues. Not everybody. Some people would have much less significant issues, and they're like, I can't even handle my lesser significant issues. So they project that guilt and shame on you for that. And that's just something, maybe it's my dad taught me, maybe my mom taught me, I don't know, Sunday school, my grandma, I don't know, somebody taught me and said, I heard my whole life, life's not fair. Life's not easy. That kind of a thing. It's like, you just don't know what's going to happen. So the best thing you can do is the best thing you can do that day, And so why would you stop? Because, well, no one's going to see this. People found out I wrote that book in 38 days. They're like, it's taking me 5 years to finish a book. It's like, I don't know, but you just got to do it. You just got to get up and I'm going to, make a commitment and do these things. And if I've got 5 years left to do it, if I've got 30 years left to do it, it doesn't matter. I want to do everything that I can do now. And so that's huge for me.
You hit on something, and I wanted to. I have turned some corners. I'm constantly trying to evolve in just the leadership world, and one of them is as a parent. And my kids are athletes in that performance world, and I coach their teams, and sometimes I get called in to do that. But I enjoy. I grew up in a little adverse situation, and it still exists today. So I find a lot of pride in just being able to help motivate people through those, and I've been able to turn some mental block corners for myself here within the last few weeks and months, where I'm constantly working on me, trying to figure out, because I want to the impression that I leave on my kids and the other kids and even adults that I work with is a big deal. And so my kids, was working through something with my son. And I'm telling you, all of you, this because I got Dr. Matt over here that is on the PhD side of leadership. And you got old Jeffrey over here that's right around the same age as Matt. I'm 50, I'll be 51 this year. So we're right there together year-wise. Mine comes from a lot of experience and a lot of things of I established early on what I didn't want, right? That was some of my examples of things that I didn't want. And I'm not mad at the journey that I've come to term, right? I'm not mad at it. So here's what I come up with. My son, we're back and forth, and I told him, I was just sitting outside, and I was like, He's 15. I was like, for 15 years, I've been telling you what best looks like. I've been telling you what high standards look like and what high performers do, and how when we get up, let's do 15 minutes of work on us and on our skill and our craft, and let's do these things, and A's and B's and academics matter and all these things because of what I felt like I had slighted myself out of earlier on, right? So I have this like, so here's what I did, dude. I'm telling you this because I'm seeing if I was on the PhD track here. So I sat down with him and I said, listen, you're going to define your best. You and your sister, you guys are going to have to define your best. And in your world, this is what I came up with. I come out of law enforcement, so we were big on acronyms as well. And then so I just always adapted that. But best, be honest with yourself, effort in every area, show up even when it's hard, and take responsibility.
Yep.
And then I created a 3-part worksheet: best at home, best academically, and best athletically. And I had them, there's question of my, and it's just worked like my why, and then my best at home looks like this.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked out like, hey, you guys fill this out for me because here's what you're going to find. Now, once you commit, and at the end of it, it's like a little bit, I understand when I'm not doing my best, there's a signature line. And then there is another of when I fall short of my best, this is how I will recover. They filled it all out, and we revisit it every morning. They get up and like, hey, did you sleep your best? Today, when they get in, we sit down to tonight should be a night where we can have maybe dinner at least standing up around the kitchen because we're both athletes and we're
Right.
fast.
I remember
But
those days.
yeah, well, we'll have those. We'll have that. That's what I was doing. Like, hey, did you how's school today? Yeah, it was this. It was this. All right. Did you do your best? Yep. Yes,
Right.
sir. Yeah, right. And then athletically, like, hey, how did it go? Did you do? And man, it turned a corner just in the last 2 weeks that I rolled that out for them. So what I wanted to point out for everyone is it doesn't, what Dr. Matt said is you can change. And if I'd have kept going down the same way of the uneducated, didn't understand or whatever, but I have to evolve with my team, meet in this case my kids and my wife. I have to evolve with them, just like maybe if you transfer that into business or your life. And we've spent a lot of time talking about how cancer impacts leadership and how all the things that came out of that, but it's all very relevant. So no matter where you are on this spectrum, whether it's doctor, parent, friend, leader, boss, lead, whatever your job is or titles is, leadership matters, and you can change and you can evolve when things change for you too, man.
Yeah, so that's perfect. That's you need to monetize that.
Thank you.
That's a great plan. But no, seriously, that is exactly what I mean by foresight.
Yeah.
Because think about the exercise. You follow the acronym BEST, then you had best at home, best at work or school, best at sports, there and all the different things. They had to visualize what that looked like. They wrote it down, and what I loved and what was the actual part that made it monetizable is what's the plan if I'm off base?
Yeah.
How do I recover? How do I get back online? That is foresight. And so many people, Jeff, they don't do that.
Yeah.
They don't do that. They just think, I would like to be the best at my sport, but I can't because I'm not the fastest. I'm not the strongest. I'm not the tallest, whatever it might be. I can't because. So I've got to settle for, and here's my favorite word these days, mediocrity.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing is so many people settle for mediocrity, and it just turns my stomach, to have somebody think that the best they can do is average. It makes me nauseous. It's like, come on, that's not what we're here for. We're here to, even like you said, I love it because if it's just your family and that's not a small thing, by the way, if it's just your family, you are here to lead, to guide, to protect, to support, to encourage, to, all those things for the people in your house. That's leadership at its finest. We don't need to be the CEO of a company. We don't need to be the innovator and patent holder of this, that, and the other to be revered or respected as a leader. You just need to lead your home well, lead in your community well, do the little things, be excellent, be perceptive, and for that just means pay attention to what's going on around you. That's all that means. Be inspired, have something that you like to do, have something that just gets you excited about the day, the moment, whatever it is. Find that, and then be compassionate. And my favorite play on words is we talk about, well, be compassionate, be empathetic or be nice to people. And I actually unpack a little in a lot of detail what that looks like. I know we're getting short on time here, but compassionate, if you think about, it's two words, so it's a compound word, com from the Latin, which means with or together, and passion, which also means suffering. We misunderstand the concept of passion like crazy. We talk about people pursuing your passion and going after your passion and knowing your passion. That's an Americanized concept of, do what you love or find something you love. That's never what passion meant.
Yeah.
And the original, and Easter was a few weeks ago. So a lot of, we're talking about the passion of the Christ is the perfect phrase. It's actually the suffering of Christ. And passion, somebody who's going through passion, they were literally going through severe pain and suffering. So compassion is joining together with your pain. That's literally what that means. And so you need to join together with your pain and do the hard thing despite the pain. And that's what compassion is. So somebody who demonstrates compassion comes alongside someone, including themselves, and does the hard thing and embraces the suffering as a process that forms them. And that's what leaders do differently that other people don't. And why you look at certain people and be like, man, how did they get there? How did they accomplish that? How did they do that? How can they have this frame of mind? It's because they understand that compassion is something different than we generally associate it with. And it's because they were willing to do the hard thing. And that's, you said it at the beginning. It's like the main message is here is you can change. And like I said, it's easier to die than change for a lot of people. Reject and resist that mindset, because leaders are always about trying to get themselves and the people around them to realize we can change. We can do the hard thing. It can be better than how it is.
Man, this is unless you change your number, this is episode 1 with me and Matt, because I'm gonna revisit with you in about 4 weeks to check in on you and to continue this conversation. Man, I hope we can do that.
I would love to.
In the meantime, ideal clients that you like working with, is there in your coaching program or in your speaking, is there someone that you love to put out there to connect with you if they want to learn more about you? Or who do you like? What do you want to leave our audience with on how folks can get in touch with you and kind of what you're looking for there?
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. So the best thing is, go on my website. I have a website. It's the same. You can either go to MatthewKutz.com or drmattkutz.com. Both addresses take you to the same website. On that website, you can get a list of some of my clients. You can see some of my talks. You can order my books. You can pre-order the new one, Becoming Epic, which again I'm excited about. So, and if you want to email me, I have my email address on there. I promise you this too. I'm not one of those guys who gets a message and doesn't respond. I will respond. So, I'd love to answer any questions. If anybody out there is struggling with prostate cancer, either early, beginning, mid, any stage in that, questions about that, I would love to talk to you and just give you some of my story, my advice, and that leadership, anything like that. I'd love to help you. So MatthewKutz.com or drmattkutz.com is the best place to go.
Man, I appreciate you. I think this folks, this was our chance to get to know each other, and it took every twist and turn that I didn't anticipate, just going over and making show notes for this episode, and it turned into this powerful conversation of hope. hope and a powerful conversation of the power of change. And when you combine both of those together, if you take nothing away, if not every situation is life ending, and you have the ability to take control of your life and change at any point in time and evolve with that situation, you know someone who needs to connect with Dr. Matt. You know someone who needs to listen to this episode, and we can't thank you enough for sharing it. Because this is what the intentions of this is for us to get out here and help people not experience some of the negatives that I have and beat my head against the wall. So that was my whole goal, was creating conversations with everyday people that are just living life and making impacts in different areas. So man, I can't thank you enough for being that hope dealer on this week's episode. And I look
Thanks, Jeff.
forward to our future conversations, man. Thank you.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Jeff.